Power hides behind a uniform, mistaking quiet resolve for weakness. In a southern town heavy with old resentments, police believe their authority is untouchable, and a grieving black family easy to silence. To them, the man they killed was just another troublemaker, leaving behind fragile mourners. But beneath the surface, his brother, a decorated military commander, returns with silent discipline and a promise to protect. When intimidation escalates, the family is forced to fight back, igniting a confrontation that will shake the town's soul and prove that what seems weak may be far stronger than anyone expects. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun beat down on Eastridge, Mississippi, turning the air thick and heavy. Inside the Taylor home, the hum of window units barely cut through the oppressive heat. The living room, usually bright and welcoming, felt smaller today, crowded with black-clad figures moving in slow motion. Sharon Taylor stood before the hallway mirror, fingers trembling as she fastened a pearl necklace, Marcus's last Christmas gift to her. Her reflection showed dark circles under red-rimmed eyes, evidence of another sleepless night. Behind her, relatives arranged food on the dining room table, their whispered conversations a soft backdrop to her grief. Aunt Sharon? Her niece appeared at her side, holding out a glass of water. You haven't had anything to drink all morning? Sharon nodded, accepting the glass, but not drinking. Her gaze drifted to the family photos lining the wall. Marcus's smile beamed from every frame. At their wedding, at school events, coaching Little League. Images that now felt like daggers to her heart. The doorbell chimed again, and more neighbors filtered in, each carrying covered dishes and heavy hearts. Mrs. Johnson from next door wrapped Sharon in a tight embrace, her familiar lavender perfume mixing with the smell of fresh-baked cornbread. "We're all here for you, baby," Mrs. Johnson whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "The whole community stands with the Taylors." Sharon's mind wandered to that terrible night, the memory as sharp as broken glass. The cell phone video had gone viral within hours. Marcus's last moments played out for the world to see. She could still hear the screech of tires, see the flash of red and blue lights reflected in the rain-slicked street. The video showed it all. Marcus, calm and collected, hands visible on the steering wheel. Officer Brad Miller, aggressive from the start, barking orders with his hand already on his weapon. "I said get out of the car. Now!" Marcus's voice, steady despite his fear. "Officer, I'm reaching for my registration, just like you asked." The crack of gunshots, the screams of onlookers, the phone shaking as the witness ran closer, capturing Miller standing over Marcus's body, not even attempting CPR. "They're saying it was justified," someone muttered in the kitchen, pulling Sharon back to the present. "Can you believe that? 3 shots at point-blank range, and they're calling it justified." "Hush now," another voice responded. "This isn't the time." But it was impossible to separate the grief from the anger. Outside, Sharon could see small groups gathering on the sidewalk, some holding handmade signs. The local news van had arrived an hour ago, its satellite dish reaching toward the cloudless sky like an accusing finger. Marcus's sister Lisa approached, straightening Sharon's collar with gentle hands. "The protest organizers promised to keep their distance during the service," she said softly. "But there's already a crowd forming at the courthouse." Sharon nodded, remembering Marcus's words from their last conversation. He'd been worried about the rising tensions between police and the black community in Eastridge. "Someone needs to build bridges," he'd said, "before things get worse." Now here they were, living his worst fear. In the kitchen, Marcus's mother sat in her usual chair, accepting hugs from an endless stream of well-wishers. Her face remained composed, but her hands clutched a tissue, shredding it slowly into tiny pieces that fell like snow into her lap. The house filled with the low murmur of shared stories. "Remember when Marcus helped my Johnny get into college? Did you hear about the time he talked down those two boys fighting in the cafeteria? That man spent his own money buying supplies for kids who couldn't afford them." Each memory was a testament to the life Miller had stolen. A life dedicated to lifting others up, to making peace, to showing kids a better way. A commotion outside drew Sharon to the window. More police cars had arrived, their presence adding a menacing edge to the gathering crowd. Officers stood in loose formation, hands resting too casually on their weapons. "It's time," Lisa announced, checking her watch. "The cars are ready." The family began moving toward the door, a solemn procession in pressed black suits and modest dresses. Sharon's son, Marcus Jr., took her arm, his young face set in a mask of determination that made him look so much like his father it hurt. Outside, the humidity wrapped around them like a wet blanket. The funeral procession stretched down the block. Dozens of cars with their headlights on, ready to make the short drive to Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church. As Sharon settled into the lead car, she caught sight of more police vehicles parked at the intersection. Their presence felt less like protection and more like a threat, a reminder that the system that had taken Marcus was still very much in power. The driver closed her door with a soft click, and Sharon clutched her purse tighter, feeling the weight of the folded program inside. Marcus's face smiled up from the cover, his school ID photo chosen for its professional look. The same photo the news had used in their coverage, juxtaposed against Miller's body cam footage. The procession began to move, crawling through the streets of Eastridge like a black snake. In her rearview mirror, Sharon could see the church spires rising against the morning sky, and the clusters of people already gathering on its steps. More police stood watch, their badges glinting in the sunlight, while mourners filed past them with lowered eyes and raised chins. The church's ancient wooden doors groaned open as mourners filed into Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the sea of black-clad figures. The familiar scent of old hymnals and lemon polish filled the air, now mixed with the sweet perfume of funeral flowers banking the altar. Sharon sat in the front pew, her mother-in-law's hand clasped tightly in hers. Marcus Jr. sat rigid beside them, his Sunday suit already showing wrinkles from the heat. The choir began "Amazing Grace," their voices rising to the rafters, where overhead fans spun lazily against the pressed tin ceiling. The casket stood open at the front of the church, surrounded by white lilies and photos of Marcus. Coaching basketball, at graduation ceremonies, always with that gentle smile that had made him such a beloved counselor. Sharon couldn't bring herself to look directly at it, focusing instead on the program in her lap, its edges already worn from her nervous fingers. A sudden shift in the atmosphere drew her attention to the back of the church. Officer Brad Miller stood in the doorway, his police uniform pressed and gleaming. Two other officers flanked him, their faces set in what they probably thought were respectful expressions. A ripple of tension moved through the congregation as Miller swaggered down the aisle, choosing a seat near the middle where he could be seen. The choir's voices wavered slightly, but didn't stop. Mrs. Peterson, the lead soprano, closed her eyes tighter and sang louder, as if her voice alone could drown out the wrongness of Miller's presence. "The nerve of him," someone whispered behind Sharon, "coming here like he's got any right." Miller's voice carried clearly over the music. "Guess he won't be counseling any more troubled youth." He snickered, loud enough for the nearby rows to hear. Sharon's hands began to shake. Marcus Jr. stiffened beside her, his jaw clenching in a way that reminded her so much of his father, it made her chest ache. Reverend Williams stepped to the pulpit, his deep voice steady as he began the service. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of Marcus Taylor, a man who dedicated himself to lifting up others. A phone camera clicked, the sound sharp and inappropriate in the sacred space. Miller held his phone up, deliberately taking photos of the open casket. His fellow officers shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Got to document this for the boys back at the station," Miller said, his voice carrying in the hushed church. "They'll want to see how peaceful he looks now." Gasps and mutters rippled through the congregation. Deacon Johnson half rose from his seat, but was gently pulled back down by his wife. The choir director's hands trembled as she guided the singers into "Precious Lord, take my hand." Sharon felt the rage and grief building in her throat like a scream. Marcus's mother squeezed her hand harder, her wedding ring pressing painfully into Sharon's fingers. "Look at them all acting so holy," Miller stage whispered to his companions, like he was some kind of saint instead of just another. "Officer Miller," Reverend Williams interrupted, his voice firm but controlled. "This is a house of God." Miller smirked and leaned back in the pew, spreading his arms across its back. His badge caught the light from the windows, a mocking reminder of the power he wielded. The service continued, but the damage was done. Every testimonial about Marcus's kindness, every story about his dedication to his students, was tainted by Miller's presence and his occasional derisive snorts. When Marcus's former students stood to sing "Bridge Over Troubled Water," his favorite song, Miller pulled out his phone again, this time typing loudly. The clicking of his keys punctuated the children's voices like tiny gunshots. Sharon tried to focus on the memories being shared. Marcus staying late to help students with college applications, Marcus organizing food drives, Marcus mediating conflicts with endless patience. But Miller's voice kept cutting through. "Guess he should have shown more respect for the law," he commented during one eulogy. "Might still be here if he had." Finally, after what felt like hours, Miller and his fellow officers stood. They made a show of stretching, their movements deliberately casual and disruptive. As they walked out, Miller's laughter echoed off the high ceiling, followed by the heavy thud of the church doors. The congregation sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Sharon felt something inside her break. A sob tore from her throat, raw and primal. Marcus Jr. wrapped his arms around her as she doubled over, her tears soaking into his suit jacket. Around them, the murmuring began. "This isn't right. Something has to be done. We can't let them get away with this." Mrs. Johnson leaned forward from the pew behind them, her voice trembling with rage and determination. "The Lord sees everything," she said, "and so did everyone in this church today. Justice will come." The choir director raised her hands, leading them into "We shall overcome." The familiar words rose from hundreds of throats, carrying years of pain and hope in every note. Sharon rocked in her son's embrace as the voices swelled around them, a promise and a prayer. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as mourners spilled out of Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church. The temperature had risen during the service, and now the humid air crackled with more than just heat. Police cruisers lined the street, their lights off, but their presence unmistakable. Officer Miller stood with his colleagues near their vehicles, still smirking as he showed them something on his phone. The sight of him pushed the crowd's simmering anger to a boil. "Murderer!" someone shouted. Others took up the cry, their voices rising in a chorus of rage and pain. The police shifted their stance, hands moving to their belts. Miller's smirk widened as he stepped forward, badge glinting. "Y'all want to be careful now," he called out. "Wouldn't want any more unfortunate incidents." Sharon clutched Marcus Jr. closer as the crowd surged forward. Reverend Williams tried to calm his congregation, but his words were lost in the growing chaos. Signs that had been lying flat during the service now rose into the air. Justice for Marcus. Black Lives Matter. Stop police violence. Get back, an officer ordered, unclipping his holster. The action sent a wave of panic through the crowd. Some people retreated while others pressed forward, creating a dangerous push and pull. "He killed my Marcus in cold blood," Sharon's mother-in-law cried out, her voice breaking. "And now he mocks us in our own church." The tension reached a breaking point. A water bottle arced through the air, missing Miller but shattering against a police car. Officers drew their batons, and the crowd's roar grew deafening. Then, cutting through the noise, came the sound of boots on pavement. Measured, purposeful steps. The crowd parted instinctively as a figure in crisp military dress approached from the street. Aaron Taylor moved with quiet authority, his Delta Force commander's uniform immaculate, his face composed but intent. He stopped in the no-man's land between the police and the protesters, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. "Brother," Sharon whispered, recognition and relief flooding her voice. Aaron surveyed the scene, his trained eye taking in every detail. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the church steps. "I understand everyone's anger," he said. "I feel it too. That man killed my brother." Miller's smirk faltered as he registered Aaron's words, taking in the military uniform and the family resemblance to Marcus. "But this?" Aaron gestured to the confrontation. "This is exactly what they want. They want us angry, disorganized, and violent. They want an excuse." He turned slowly, addressing both sides. "I've spent my career fighting for this country. I've seen what happens when anger overcomes strategy, when rage replaces discipline." The crowd grew still, hanging on his words. Even the police seemed uncertain how to respond to this unexpected development. Marcus believed in education, in organization, in lifting each other up, Aaron continued. He wouldn't want blood in front of his church. He'd want us to fight smart, to stand together, to use our minds and our hearts, not our fists. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. "I want everyone here to write down what they saw today. Times, words, actions. We're building a case, not a riot. We're going to use the system against itself." People began nodding. Someone produced pens. Phones came out to record Aaron's words. "If you have video from today, preserve it. If you witnessed any harassment, document it. We're going to do this right." Aaron's voice grew stronger. "Because when we win, and we will win, it's going to be permanent. It's going to be legal. And it's going to be just." The tension began to dissipate, replaced by something more purposeful. People formed small groups, sharing contact information, comparing notes. A young law student stepped forward to help collect statements. Miller and his fellow officers retreated to their vehicles, their earlier bravado deflated by this unexpected turn of events. As they pulled away from the curb, Aaron's steady gaze followed them. Sharon approached her brother-in-law, tears streaming down her face. He enveloped her in a tight embrace, careful not to crush his uniform. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner," he murmured, "but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Marcus Jr. joined them, and Aaron placed a strong hand on his nephew's shoulder. "Your father was the best of us," he said, "and we're going to make sure everyone knows that." The crowd continued to disperse peacefully, but with purpose. Phone numbers were exchanged, meetings were planned, and a network began to form. Where there had been chaos, Aaron had brought direction. Where there had been helpless rage, he had offered hope. "We'll start tomorrow," Aaron told Sharon, his arms still around her shoulders. "Every piece of evidence, every witness, every legal option. They thought they could mock us in our pain? They're about to learn what real strength looks like." The church steps slowly cleared, leaving behind not the scene of violence the police had expected, but something far more dangerous to their impunity. An organized community ready to fight with truth and law rather than fists and fury. The evening settled over the Taylor family home like a heavy blanket. The dining room, with its familiar wallpaper and well-worn chairs, felt different now, emptier, despite being full of people. The clink of silverware against plates punctuated the silence as Sharon placed a casserole dish on the table, one of many brought by church members after the service. Aaron sat at the head of the table, a position Marcus used to occupy. The change felt wrong, but necessary. His military bearing remained, even in this intimate setting, as if his training wouldn't let him fully relax. Marcus Jr. pushed his food around his plate, while Mama Taylor, their mother, dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "You need to eat something, baby," Sharon urged her son softly, reaching over to touch his hand. The boy nodded but didn't lift his fork. The TV hummed quietly in the background until a familiar name caught their attention. Aaron reached for the remote and turned up the volume. "In the officer-involved shooting of Marcus Taylor," the news anchor was saying, "the police department maintains that Officer Brad Miller acted within protocol when Taylor allegedly reached for his waistband during a routine traffic stop. Body camera footage appears to support—" "That's a lie," Mama Taylor's voice cracked. "My boy never reached for anything. He had his hands up." Aaron muted the TV, his jaw tight. "They're spinning it, using the same old playbook." He turned to Sharon. "You said there was bystander video?" Sharon nodded, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. "Mrs. Johnson's daughter recorded it from their porch. It shows everything. Marcus with his hands clearly visible, Miller shouting contradictory orders, then—" She couldn't finish. A knock at the door made everyone jump. Sharon's neighbor, Patricia, stood there with an envelope in her hand, her face drawn with concern. "This was stuck in your screen door," she said, handing it to Sharon. "I saw that awful Miller putting it there about an hour ago." Sharon opened the envelope, her face growing pale as she read. They say we're 3 months behind on rent. That's impossible. I have all the receipts, every payment." Aaron took the notice, scanning it quickly. The letterhead was from a management company he'd never heard of. "When did you last deal with the original landlord?" "2 weeks ago," Sharon replied. "He came by to fix the back door. Never mentioned anything about selling or changing companies." "They're trying to push us out," Aaron said, his voice low and controlled. "Classic intimidation tactic. First the funeral, now this." Mama Taylor began to cry softly. "My boy built a life here. 20 years in this house. His children were born here." Aaron moved to his mother's side, kneeling beside her chair. His strong hands enclosed her smaller ones. "Mama, listen to me. They think they can break us. They think if they push hard enough, we'll run scared. But they don't know who they're dealing with." "I have all the bank statements," Sharon said, her teacher's organizational skills kicking in. "Every receipt, every interaction documented. I keep everything." "Good," Aaron nodded. "That's exactly what we need. Documentation, evidence. They're used to people being too frightened or overwhelmed to fight back properly." Marcus Jr. spoke for the first time since the funeral. "Dad always said to keep records. Said it was important, especially for us." Aaron smiled sadly at his nephew. "Your father was a smart man. He knew the game they play, and now we're going to use everything he taught us." The family worked to clear the table, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Sharon packed leftovers, while Mama Taylor supervised Marcus Jr. loading the dishwasher. Aaron checked the locks on all the windows and doors, his military training making the security sweep second nature. The night had grown darker, but the street lights cast enough glow to illuminate the yard. Voices drifted up from outside, familiar, unwelcome voices. "Did you see them all scrambling to write things down?" Miller's mocking tone carried clearly through the window. Like they think their little notebook's gonna change anything. Aaron moved silently to the window, staying hidden behind the curtain. He could make out Miller and two other officers standing by a patrol car. "That soldier boy thinks he's gonna come in here and shake things up," Miller continued. "Probably some desk jockey playing dress-up. Bet he ain't never seen real action." Aaron's fists clenched at his sides, his knuckles white with controlled rage. The irony of Miller's words might have been amusing if the situation weren't so serious. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and countless classified operations. Aaron had seen more action than Miller could imagine. "Should we run the tags on his rental?" one of the other officers asked. "Maybe find something interesting." "Already on it," Miller replied. "Gonna show these people what happens when they don't know their place. By the time we're done, won't be a tailor left in Eastridge." Aaron's military training kept him rooted in place, even as every instinct screamed to confront them. He focused on his breathing, using techniques honed in far more dangerous situations. The enemy was showing their hand, revealing their strategy. Let them think they had the upper hand. Through the window, he watched Miller toss his cigarette onto the tailor's lawn before climbing into his patrol car. The vehicle pulled away slowly, deliberately, a predator's casual departure meant to intimidate. The sun crept over Eastridge's horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Aaron Taylor walked down Main Street, his military boots clicking against the cracked sidewalk. The morning air was thick with humidity, but he maintained his purposeful stride, checking each storefront with careful attention. Miss Ruby's Soul Food Kitchen was usually open by now, its windows normally bright with welcome. Today, the lights were off. Aaron knocked on the door, and after a moment, Ruby Wilson's weathered face appeared. Her usual warm smile was replaced with worry lines. "Commander Taylor," she said, unlocking the door. "I was hoping you'd come by." Inside, the restaurant smelled of fresh coffee and biscuits, but the tables were empty. Ruby led Aaron to the counter, where citation papers lay scattered. 3 health code violations yesterday," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "In 30 years, I never had one violation. Then suddenly, right after your brother's funeral, they find all these problems." Aaron picked up one of the citations, reading it carefully. "Improper food storage temperatures," he read aloud. "But your refrigerators are new." "Brand new," Ruby confirmed. "Installed last month. That officer, Miller, he came in with the health inspector. Kept touching things in my kitchen, moving stuff around. When I tried to stop him, he said he'd arrest me for interfering with an investigation." Aaron pulled out a small notebook and began writing. "Did you get their badge numbers? Time of inspection?" "Got it all right here," Ruby said, pulling out her phone. "My granddaughter taught me to record everything. Even got some video before they made me stop." 2 doors down, Johnson's Hardware told a similar story. Mr. Johnson, a man who'd given Marcus his first summer job, stood amid ransacked shelves and broken glass. "They said it was a routine inspection," he explained, pointing to overturned paint cans and scattered tools. "Claimed they got an anonymous tip about illegal weapons. Tore the place apart. Found nothing, of course. But look at this mess. It'll take days to clean up." Aaron documented everything: dates, times, officer names when available. His military training showed in his precise notes and methodical questions. Each business owner's story added another piece to the puzzle of systematic harassment. At Big Earl's barber shop, the situation was even worse. The front window was shattered, and spray-painted slurs marred the brick walls. Earl Thomas Jr., who'd cut Marcus's hair since he was a boy, stood outside with a broom, sweeping up glass. "Third time this week," Earl said, his voice heavy. "Police drive by, see the vandals, do nothing. File a report. They say they'll look into it. But we all know better." Aaron helped Earl sweep, his presence drawing curious onlookers. Some neighbors emerged from their homes, sharing their own stories of recent harassment. Expired tags that weren't expired, noise complaints for quiet gatherings, sudden building code violations. Sharon arrived as Aaron was finishing his notes outside the barber shop. She carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to her brother-in-law. "I saw the photos online," she said quietly. "Miller posted that picture from the funeral, called it his trophy." Her hands shook slightly as she sipped her coffee. Aaron's expression remained controlled, but his grip tightened on his cup. "How are you holding up?" "Scared," Sharon admitted, "but mostly angry. Marcus spent his whole life building bridges in this community. He believed in making things better from the inside. Now look at what they're doing to everyone who supported him." They watched as Earl's teenage son arrived with cleaning supplies, determinedly scrubbing at the hateful words on the wall. Other community members began to gather, offering help and support. "This is what they don't understand," Aaron said, gesturing to the growing crowd of helpers. "They think fear and force are power. But real strength?" He nodded toward the people working together. "Real strength is in unity, in refusing to break." Sharon touched the St. Christopher medal she wore, Marcus's medal. "But how do we fight this? They have badges, guns, the whole system behind them." "We fight smart," Aaron replied, showing her his notebook. "Every incident documented. Every violation of procedure recorded. Every abuse of power tracked. They're used to operating in shadows, counting on silence and fear. We're going to shine a light so bright they'll have nowhere to hide." A police cruiser rolled by slowly, the officer inside watching the gathering crowd with obvious suspicion. Aaron positioned himself subtly between the cruiser and Sharon, his protective instinct automatic. "I promised Marcus something once," Aaron said after the cruiser passed. "When he first started teaching, he told me about the challenges his students faced. The profiling, the harassment, the constant pressure. I promised him I'd always have his back." Sharon watched as more neighbors arrived, bringing paint to cover the graffiti. "He knew you did. Even when you were deployed, he always said his big brother was watching over us." "I wasn't here when he needed me most." Aaron's voice carried a weight of guilt. "But I'm here now, and I promise you, Sharon, I will get justice for Marcus. Not just legal justice, but real change. They won't hurt our family or our community anymore." The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the street. Earl's son had nearly finished cleaning the wall, while others organized repairs for the window. The community's response to hatred was rebuilding, supporting each other, refusing to be cowed. Sarah Kimball's home was a testament to her life's work. Law books lined floor-to-ceiling shelves, their spines well-worn from decades of use. The retired judge sat in her favorite armchair, a cup of tea cooling on the side table as she listened to Aaron Taylor outline the morning's discoveries. "Systematic harassment," Aaron explained, spreading his notebook on her coffee table. "Every black-owned business that showed support for our family has been targeted. Health code violations, building inspections, police searches, all within days of Marcus's funeral." Sarah adjusted her reading glasses, examining Aaron's careful notes. Her silver hair caught the afternoon light streaming through lace curtains. "They're not even trying to be subtle anymore," she said, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "But that's good for us. Arrogance makes people sloppy." She stood, moving to a shelf filled with local legal records. "The key is documentation. Not just the incidents themselves, but the pattern. Show me what you've gathered so far." Aaron pulled out his phone, showing her Ruby Wilson's video of the health inspection. "Miller's fingerprints are all over this. He's personally involved in most of these incidents." "Classic intimidation tactics," Sarah nodded, pulling out several thick binders. "I've seen this before. In '92, When we tried to integrate the school board, same playbook: systematic pressure on supporters, selective enforcement of regulations, creating paper trails to justify harassment. She spread the binders on her dining room table, revealing years of meticulously organized records. But here's what they don't expect. We're going to build our own paper trail. Every incident, every witness, every violation of procedure. We need eyes and ears everywhere. Aaron leaned forward, studying her materials. I've got people willing to help. Veterans, church members, business owners. But they need protection. Start with these. Sarah handed him a stack of small cameras, perfectly legal to record in public spaces. Get them to trusted community members. Document everything. She smiled slightly. I may be retired, but I still have friends in useful places. They spent the next hour mapping out strategy. Sarah's legal expertise complemented Aaron's tactical training. They identified key locations for surveillance, created communication networks, and established secure ways to store evidence. We'll need people we can trust absolutely, Sarah emphasized. Miller has informants. We can't risk our evidence disappearing. Aaron nodded, thinking of faces he knew he could count on. Mrs. Anderson at the post office. She sees everything, knows everyone's business. Earl's son James is good with computers, could help set up secure storage. Reverend Pike can coordinate through the church network. Sarah approved each suggestion, adding names from her own decades of community work. Remember, this isn't just about catching them in the act. We need to prove the pattern. Show how these random incidents connect. They moved to her study, where Sarah pulled out city planning maps and property records. Follow the money, she advised. Every corrupt system has a paper trail. Miller's just a foot soldier. We need to find who's really pulling the strings. Aaron studied the documents, his military training helping him spot patterns. These properties, all purchased within months of each other, right after the new police chief took office. Exactly. Sarah pointed to several locations. Businesses forced to sell after repeated citations. Properties rezoned overnight. Always the same buyers, hidden behind shell companies. The afternoon stretched into evening as they built their strategy. Sarah made fresh tea, while Aaron called trusted community members, setting up meetings, establishing code words and safety protocols. We need to be smarter than them, Sarah said, watching Aaron organize their gathered materials. They have badges and guns. We need to have ironclad evidence and public support. Aaron's phone buzzed with messages from people ready to help. Mrs. Anderson reporting unusual police activity near the church. James sending links to secure cloud storage. Reverend Pike confirming Sunday's prayer meeting, their cover for training volunteers. This is how we fight, Aaron said, his voice firm. Not with violence, but with truth. Every move they make, we document. Every abuse of power, we record. Build the case so strong they can't ignore it. Back at his house, Aaron cleared space in his garage. He hung a large map of Eastridge, marking locations of incidents with red pins. String-connected related events, creating a visual web of corruption. Timeline cards detailed each occurrence. Dates, times, witnesses, evidence collected. Sarah had given him copies of key documents, which he now organized chronologically. Property records, police reports, business licenses, pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. He added photos from his morning visits, each showing a different face of systematic harassment. The garage wall became a command center, a testament to the battle ahead. Aaron stood back, studying the connections. Miller's name appeared repeatedly, but he wasn't alone. Other officers, city officials, business owners, all part of a larger network of corruption. His phone buzzed again. More community members signing up to help. More eyes watching, more evidence gathering. Aaron added their names to his trusted contacts list, careful to use the code system Sarah had suggested. The wall told a story, not just of Marcus's death, but of years of systematic oppression. Each pin, each string, each document revealed another layer of injustice. But now, finally, they had a plan to expose it all. The morning sun had barely risen when Aaron began his rounds. His military training showed in his methodical approach, notebook ready, phone camera recording, moving in a careful grid pattern through Eastridge's streets. Every interaction between police and civilians caught his attention, especially in predominantly black neighborhoods. Outside Thompson's grocery, 2 patrol cars blocked the entrance. Aaron watched from his parked car as officers hassled customers, checking IDs and searching bags. He documented everything: time, badge numbers, license plates, civilian witnesses. "Fourth time this week," Mrs. Thompson said when the police finally left. Her hands shook as she straightened knocked over displays. "They say they're looking for shoplifters, but they only stop black customers." Aaron helped her clean up, his phone still recording. "Have you kept records of previous visits?" "Every single one." She pulled out a thick notebook from under the counter. "Times, dates, which officers?" "Just like you asked." By mid-morning, news vans appeared on Main Street. Aaron had contacted several national networks, sharing initial evidence of systematic harassment. Now reporters interviewed residents, their cameras capturing stories of police abuse that had gone unchecked for years. "It's not just random incidents," Aaron explained to a CNN reporter, showing her his documented pattern of harassment. "Look at these citations. Black-owned businesses received 85% of health code violations in the past year, despite being only 30% of local businesses." The reporter studied his evidence, her eyes widening. "And you can prove this pattern?" Aaron nodded, pulling up more data on his tablet. Every incident documented, verified, and cross-referenced. "We've got testimonies, video evidence, official records, all showing systematic targeting." Throughout the day, more community members came forward. A line formed outside Reverend Pike's church, people waiting to share their stories with journalists. Aaron coordinated with Sarah Kimball, ensuring each testimony was properly documented and verified. "They gave me 3 tickets in one day," an elderly woman told NBC News, her hands clutching crumpled citations. "Said my garden gnome violated city ordinances. Been there 20 years. Never had a problem before I put up my Black Lives Matter sign." The police response was immediate and aggressive. More patrol cars appeared, officers filming protesters and taking notes. Aaron watched them photograph license plates of cars parked near the church. "Stay calm, stay organized," he reminded everyone during an impromptu community meeting. "Document everything. Use your phones, but keep your distance. Don't give them any excuse." By afternoon, the story had gone viral. Social media lit up with videos from Eastridge. Local residents shared their experiences using hashtags Sarah had suggested, creating a digital timeline of abuse. Officer Miller and his colleagues grew more confrontational. They parked outside black-owned businesses, running unnecessary ID checks on customers. Aaron's network of observers reported each incident, building their case stronger by the hour. "They're trying to intimidate us," Aaron told Sarah during a brief meeting. "But they're just giving us more evidence." In his garage command center, Aaron updated the wall map. New pins showed police harassment locations, creating clear patterns of targeted enforcement. Red string connected related incidents, revealing coordination that couldn't be coincidental. James, Earl's tech-savvy son, helped Aaron secure their digital evidence. "Everything's encrypted," he explained, setting up automated backups. "Even if they seize our devices, they can't access the cloud storage." Local business owners shared security footage showing police misconduct. Aaron collected statements from former officers who'd left the force in disgust. Each piece of evidence strengthened their case, showing a department rotten with racism and corruption. "The world needs to see this," a Washington Post reporter said, reviewing Aaron's documentation. "This isn't just about one incident. It's systematic oppression caught on camera." As evening approached, tension filled Eastridge's streets. Police cruisers circled protest gatherings, lights flashing. Officers stood in threatening formations, hands on weapons. But Aaron's training had prepared the community. "Don't react," he reminded protesters through their secure messaging system. "Record everything. Stay peaceful. Let them show their true colors." In Sarah's study, Aaron carefully uploaded their gathered evidence, multiple secure copies, distributed across different servers. Everything backed up and verified, ready to release if needed. "Each folder is time-stamped and authenticated," James confirmed, double-checking their security measures. "We've got redundant backups. They can't bury this anymore." The wall of evidence in Aaron's garage had grown. Photos, documents, testimony transcripts, a damning collection of proof. He added the day's new incidents, each one strengthening their case against the department's systemic racism. Mrs. Anderson called with updates from her post office vantage point. Reverend Pike reported increased surveillance around the church. Community members kept watching, recording, documenting, just as Aaron had trained them. At his laptop, Aaron organized the final files. Videos showed clear patterns of harassment. Spreadsheets revealed discriminatory enforcement statistics. Official documents exposed coordinated targeting of Black residents and businesses. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Aaron encrypted the last files and sent them to secure storage, knowing they were now ready for whatever came next. The digital alarm clock showed 2:17 a.m. when the phone rang, shattering the quiet of the Taylor home. Sharon jolted awake, her heart pounding. She reached for her cell phone with trembling fingers. "Hello?" Her voice wavered in the darkness. "Get out of Eastridge while you still can," a distorted voice growled. "Your husband didn't listen. Look what happened to him." Sharon's breath caught in her throat. The phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the hardwood floor. Aaron, who had been sleeping in the guest room down the hall, appeared in her doorway seconds later, alert and ready. "Sharon? What's wrong?" He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, switching on the bedside lamp. She couldn't speak at first, just pointed at the phone on the floor. Aaron picked it up, checking the call log. "Blocked number," he muttered, his jaw tightening. Sharon wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warm night air. They threatened me. Mentioned Marcus." Her voice broke on her late husband's name. Aaron sat beside her on the bed, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. "Tell me exactly what they said." As Sharon recounted the brief call, Aaron's expression hardened. He pulled out his own phone, sending quick messages to his network of supporters. "We're going to trace that call," he assured her. "And I'm setting up surveillance cameras tonight. No one's getting near this house without us knowing." Sharon leaned against her brother-in-law's steady presence. "I keep thinking about Marcus, how he faced threats like this alone." "You're not alone," Aaron said firmly. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above them. Then Sharon's phone chimed with a notification. Aaron reached for it first, but Sharon grabbed it before he could. Her sharp intake of breath told him everything. "What is it?" Sharon turned the phone screen toward him, her hand shaking. There on Facebook was the photo Miller had taken at Marcus's funeral, posted with a caption that made Aaron's blood boil. "One less troublemaker in Eastridge. Who's next?" Blue Lives Matter. That son of a... Aaron caught himself, standing up to pace the room. His military training kicked in, helping him channel his rage into focused energy. Sharon scrolled through the comments, each one worse than the last. Miller's supporters were out in force, adding their own racist remarks and threats. How can he just post that? Sharon's voice cracked. That's my husband. That's Marcus. Aaron stopped pacing, his expression determined. Because he thinks he's untouchable. But he just made a massive mistake. He pulled out his phone again, taking screenshots and sending them to Sarah Kimball and their media contacts. Within minutes, their secure messaging group lit up with responses. Community members reported similar threats. The photo was being shared widely, drawing national attention and outrage. "I need you to pack a bag," Aaron said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Just essentials. You're staying at Sarah's house tonight." Sharon started to protest, but Aaron held up his hand. "Miller's escalating. He's trying to intimidate us, which means our evidence is making him nervous. But I'm not taking any chances with your safety." As Sharon gathered her things, Aaron made calls. His Delta Force contacts promised additional security measures. Local supporters volunteered to watch the house in shifts. "I feel like I'm running away," Sharon admitted as she zipped up her overnight bag. "Like I'm letting them win." Aaron took her hands in his. "You're not running. You're being strategic. Remember what I told the protesters? We have to be smart about this fight." A car pulled up outside, Sarah Kimball's sedan. Aaron checked through the window before opening the door, scanning the street for any suspicious vehicles. "I'll have the cameras installed before dawn," he told Sharon as he walked her to Sarah's car. "And I'm setting up a safe house network. We're not just playing defense anymore." Sarah hugged Sharon as she got in the car. "My guest room's all ready. And I've got some news about Miller's previous complaints that you'll want to hear." Aaron watched until their taillights disappeared around the corner. Back inside, he began implementing his security plans, his mind racing with next steps. Miller's arrogance in posting that photo would be his downfall. But first, Aaron had to ensure his family's safety. He worked through the night, installing cameras, reinforcing locks, and coordinating with supporters. Every few minutes, his phone buzzed with updates about the growing online outrage over Miller's post. Near dawn, Aaron returned to Sharon's room. He sat in the armchair by her window, maintaining his vigil even though she wasn't there. The first rays of sunlight crept across Marcus's photo on the bedside table, his bright smile a reminder of everything they were fighting for. Aaron's hands clenched the armrests. Miller and his corrupt colleagues had enjoyed their power for too long, terrorizing families like his with impunity. That ended now. He would use every skill, every contact, every resource at his disposal to expose their crimes and bring them to justice. Saturday morning cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of Mount Zion Baptist Church. In the basement, folding chairs scraped against concrete floors as community leaders filed in, their faces set with determination. Aaron Taylor stood at a makeshift podium, his military bearing evident even in civilian clothes. "Thank you all for coming," he began, scanning the faces before him. Local business owners, church elders, teachers, and civil rights activists filled the rows. "We're here because what happened to Marcus isn't just about my family anymore. It's about every family in East Ridge living under the shadow of fear." Mrs. Washington, who owned the corner grocery store, raised her hand. "They've doubled their patrols past my shop. Yesterday, they wrote me up for a code violation that doesn't exist." Aaron nodded, making notes on a legal pad. "That's exactly why we need to coordinate our response. They want us scattered and afraid. We'll show them united and determined." A creak from the back stairs drew everyone's attention. Deputy Carlos Ramirez stood in the doorway, still in uniform, his expression unreadable. The room tensed. Aaron noticed how Ramirez's hand stayed away from his weapon, a deliberate choice to appear non-threatening. "Deputy," Aaron acknowledged calmly, though his muscles coiled instinctively. "This is a public meeting. You're welcome to observe." Ramirez nodded once and took a seat in the back corner. Some people shifted their chairs away from him, while others whispered behind raised hands. Aaron redirected attention to the matter at hand. "We're planning a peaceful march for next Saturday. 2 miles, starting from the courthouse and ending at City Hall." He unrolled a map across the table. "We'll need marshals every 50 feet, all trained in de-escalation." Reverend Matthews, his gray hair catching the fluorescent light, leaned forward. "What about permits? They'll use any excuse to shut us down." "Already submitted," Aaron replied. "Judge Kimball helped ensure the paperwork is bulletproof. But we need to be prepared for provocateurs." For the next hour, they detailed routes, emergency protocols, and media strategies. Aaron noticed how Ramirez took no notes, but his eyes tracked every speaker, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Remember," Aaron emphasized, "phones out and recording at all times. Multiple angles. We document everything." He distributed laminated cards with legal aid numbers and civil rights attorneys' contacts. Mrs. Washington raised another concern. "What about Miller's supporters? They've been gathering at the gun shop after hours." "We stay peaceful," Aaron insisted. "No exceptions. That's how we win, by showing discipline they can't match." Throughout the planning, Aaron kept peripheral awareness of Ramirez. The deputy's fingers drummed against his knee when Miller's name came up. His shoulders tensed at mentions of police misconduct. Most telling was how he avoided eye contact when specific incidents were discussed, like he knew exactly what they were talking about. The meeting shifted to organizing medical support stations and water distribution. Local nurses volunteered their time. Business owners offered their storefronts as safe havens if needed. "We'll need legal observers," Aaron continued. "Yellow vests, clearly marked. Judge Kimball is coordinating with the Bar Association." Ramirez shifted in his chair, and Aaron caught a fleeting expression, something between guilt and resolution. The deputy's wedding ring glinted as he rubbed his thumb across it, a nervous gesture. As the meeting wound down, people broke into smaller groups, discussing assignments and exchanging contact information. Aaron watched Ramirez stand and hesitate, looking like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Their eyes met briefly across the room. Aaron saw conflict there, maybe even a plea for understanding. He recognized that look from his military days, someone carrying a burden they didn't know how to put down. Reverend Matthews approached Aaron with questions about the march route, breaking the moment. When Aaron looked back, Ramirez was already climbing the stairs, his footsteps heavy and measured. The community leaders continued their discussions, voices filled with purpose and hope. Aaron participated fully, but part of his mind stayed on Ramirez's behavior. The deputy's presence spoke volumes. He could have sent a junior officer to observe, or simply relied on informants. Instead, he came himself and stayed for the entire meeting. "We'll need more marshals for the north section," someone was saying, pointing to the map. Aaron agreed, making another note, but his tactical mind was already analyzing Ramirez's potential as an ally. The deputy's body language had revealed discomfort with the current situation. His silence spoke of someone watching and weighing, not gathering intelligence to report back. The basement gradually emptied as people left with their assignments. Aaron rolled up the maps and collected the sign-up sheets, mentally adding Ramirez to his growing network of contacts and possibilities. Sometimes, he knew from experience, the strongest allies came from unexpected places. Mrs. Washington was the last to leave, pausing to squeeze Aaron's arm. "Marcus would be proud of you, son." "We all are." Aaron helped stack the chairs, his movements efficient and purposeful. The morning's meeting had accomplished its goals. The march was taking shape. The community was organizing. And perhaps, just perhaps, they'd found a crack in the blue wall of silence. The morning sun beat down on Main Street as hundreds of protesters gathered near the courthouse steps. News vans lined the curbs, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal flowers. Cameras clicked and whirred, while reporters did their stand-ups, gesturing at the growing crowd behind them. Aaron Taylor stood at the front of the march, wearing a crisp white shirt and black tie. He checked his watch, 10:58 a.m. In 2 minutes, they would begin. The marshals in their bright yellow vests were already in position, spaced exactly 50 feet apart, as planned. CNN, ABC, NBC. Sharon whispered beside him, counting the network logos. Even Fox News showed up. Aaron nodded, scanning the crowd. Signs rose above the sea of faces. Justice for Marcus Taylor. Stop police brutality. Black Lives Matter. Church groups stood shoulder to shoulder with college students. Local business owners marched alongside retired teachers. The diversity of the crowd sent a powerful message. At exactly 11 a.m., Reverend Matthews raised his bullhorn. Let us begin with a prayer. The crowd fell silent, heads bowed. Even the reporters lowered their microphones respectfully. As they started moving, Aaron's military training kicked in. He noticed everything: the police officers positioned at intersections, the unmarked cars trailing slowly alongside the march, the photographers on rooftops. Most importantly, he spotted Officer Brad Miller standing with a group of cops near City Hall, his stance aggressive, even from 2 blocks away. The marchers moved as one body, their steps measured and dignified. They sang, "We Shall Overcome," the familiar melody carrying across downtown Eastridge. Sharon held Aaron's hand tight, her other arm linked with their mother's. "Water station ahead," Aaron murmured into his radio, and the marshals smoothly directed people to the volunteers handing out bottles. The summer heat was intense, but they'd prepared for it. Medical teams in red vests watched for signs of heat exhaustion. Halfway to City Hall, Aaron noticed Deputy Ramirez standing apart from the other officers. Unlike his colleagues who wore riot gear, Ramirez was in his regular uniform. His eyes met Aaron's briefly before sliding away. The crowd grew larger as they walked, with more people joining from side streets. Aaron estimated nearly 1,000 participants now. The news helicopters circling overhead captured the scale of it. A river of humanity flowing through the heart of Eastridge. As they approached City Hall, the tension ratcheted up. A line of police officers stood at the top of the steps, Miller front and center. His hand rested on his weapon, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Aaron raised his voice. "Remember what we practiced: dignity and discipline." The marchers stopped precisely where planned, filling the plaza but maintaining clear paths to the streets. Aaron stepped up to the portable podium they'd set up, adjusting the microphone. "We gather today not in hatred, but in hope," he began. The crowd fell silent, news cameras swinging toward him. "Not in violence, but in righteous determination." As Aaron spoke, he kept peripheral awareness of the police line. Miller's smirk had fallen away, replaced by something darker. But it was Ramirez who caught his attention. The deputy was slowly working his way down the steps, moving casually between groups of officers. The speech lasted exactly 12 minutes, as planned. Other community leaders took turns at the podium while Aaron stepped back, coordinating with the marshals through his earpiece. The crowd remained peaceful but energized, their presence a testament to the community's unity. Near the end of the rally, as people began dispersing in organized groups, Aaron felt a brush against his arm. Deputy Ramirez passed by, his movement so smooth it looked accidental. But Aaron felt the small USB drive pressed into his palm. "Check your 6," Ramirez muttered, then melted into the crowd before Aaron could respond. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of interviews, coordination, and ensuring everyone got home safely. It was past midnight when Aaron finally sat down at his laptop in the kitchen, the house quiet around him. The USB drive felt heavy in his hand. Aaron ran it through a virus scan first, his military training again, before plugging it in. A folder opened automatically, revealing dozens of files. His breath caught as he began clicking through them. Audio recordings of private police meetings, internal emails discussing cover-ups, dash cam footage that had supposedly been lost. And there, in a folder labeled simply Miller, was the officer's complete disciplinary record. Aaron's hands were steady as he opened the first file. Multiple complaints of excessive force, all mysteriously dismissed. Racist comments documented by fellow officers, then buried. A pattern of targeting black-owned businesses for citations. And most damning, Miller's body cam footage from the day Marcus died, showing a very different story than the official report. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence as Aaron methodically reviewed each document. Reports of planted evidence, witness statements that had never made it to court. A network of corruption laid bare in megabytes and metadata. Ramirez had given them everything they needed. Aaron could almost hear Marcus's voice. The truth always comes out, big brother. Always. He started organizing the files, creating backups, noting which ones would be most useful to their lawyers. The evidence was overwhelming, but they would need to handle it carefully. One wrong move could jeopardize everything. The USB drive glowed faintly in his laptop's port, a tiny beacon of hope in the dark kitchen. Outside, crickets chirped in the humid night air, and somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed. The kitchen table groaned under the weight of laptops, documents, and coffee cups. Aaron rubbed his tired eyes as the clock on the microwave blinked 4:17 a.m. Sarah Kimball sat beside him, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she sorted through printed emails. "These payment records are damning," Sarah whispered, sliding a document toward Aaron. "Look at these deposits to Miller's offshore account. They line up perfectly with the harassment complaints from black business owners." Aaron's secure phone buzzed, a signal from his Delta Force team. He stepped onto the back porch, where crickets still chirped in the pre-dawn darkness. "Ghost 6, secure," a familiar voice crackled through the encrypted line. "Martinez, good to hear you," Aaron replied softly. "We've got your 6, brother. The team's already working. Rodriguez cracked their network firewall an hour ago. Watson's running financial traces. Chen's got surveillance on Miller and his crew." Aaron leaned against the porch railing. "I appreciate this. It's not exactly standard operating procedure." "Nothing standard about watching a brother's killer walk free," Martinez said. "We take care of our own. Plus, Chen says this is better training than any exercise we've run." Back inside, Sarah had organized the files into neat stacks. Red sticky notes marked the most crucial evidence. Aaron's childhood friend Marcus Johnson, now a computer forensics expert, hunched over his laptop at the end of the table. "Their whole system is rotten," Marcus muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Look at these deleted records. Every time a complaint came in against Miller or his buddies, it got flagged for special handling. Then, poof, disappeared into digital nowhere." Aaron's mother appeared with fresh coffee and homemade biscuits. She'd been up all night, too, refusing to rest while they worked. "You all need to eat," she insisted, her voice warm but worried. The sky was just beginning to lighten when Aaron's burner phone vibrated. A text from Ramirez. "Garden Center. 30 mins, come alone." "Keep working," Aaron told the others. "I've got a meeting." The garden center's parking lot was empty, except for a beat-up pickup truck. Aaron parked behind it, scanning for surveillance. Ramirez emerged from behind a stack of mulch bags, carrying a black duffel bag. "I had to wait until Miller's shift ended," Ramirez said, his voice low. "He's been watching me like a hawk." Aaron took the bag, unzipping it carefully. Inside lay Miller's backup service weapon, wrapped in an evidence bag. The ballistics will match Marcus's wounds? Ramirez nodded. Miller switched weapons after the shooting, reported this one stolen 2 days later. But I found it in his locker last night. There's more, too. He pulled out a thick manila envelope. Internal affairs reports, witness statements that got buried, and Miller's personal notebook. The things he wrote about your brother, about the community. Ramirez's voice cracked. I should have done something sooner. You're doing something now, Aaron said firmly. That counts. Back at the house, Sarah examined the new evidence with growing excitement. This is it, she said, holding up Miller's notebook. His own words prove premeditation and racial bias. Combined with the financial records and deleted complaints, Marcus Johnson looked up from his laptop. I've got the entire chain of cover-ups mapped out. Chief Thompson, the police union president, even 2 city council members. They're all implicated. Aaron's secure phone buzzed again. Ghost 6 here. We found their blackmail files. They've been extorting business owners, witnesses, even other cops. Sending everything to your secure server now. Sarah gathered the most crucial documents into her briefcase. I'm meeting Gloria Washington in an hour. Best civil rights attorney in 3 states. She's been waiting for a case like this. Aaron's mother brought more coffee, her hands steady now. Marcus always said the truth would come out, she murmured. He believed in justice, even at the end. The sun was fully up as Sarah prepared to leave. The evidence they'd gathered overnight filled 3 boxes and 2 encrypted hard drives. Aaron helped load everything into her car. This is more than just Miller now, Sarah said, her eyes bright with purpose. This is about dismantling a whole system of corruption. Are you ready for that fight? Aaron thought of Marcus, of Sharon's tears, of all the families who'd suffered in silence. More than ready. Sarah patted his arm. Gloria's office opens at 8. By noon, we'll have a legal team assembled. By tonight. She smiled for the first time in days. Well, let's just say some people in Eastridge won't be sleeping well. Through the kitchen window, Aaron could see his mother hugging Marcus Johnson, both of them crying and laughing at once. The weight of the evidence they'd gathered, the strength of the allies they'd assembled, it felt like the tide was finally turning. Ramirez's burner phone buzzed one last time. Miller's getting nervous. Keep watching your backs. Aaron deleted the message, knowing their case was growing stronger by the hour. The morning light streamed through the windows, warming the stack of documents that would change everything. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through Eastridge's humidity when the first news vans arrived. By noon, satellite trucks lined Main Street, their antennas reaching toward the sky like metal trees. Reporters clutched microphones, their faces gleaming with sweat as they delivered updates to cameras. Breaking news from Eastridge, Mississippi, a CNN reporter announced, her blazer dark with perspiration. Governor Williams has just called for a full investigation into the death of Marcus Taylor and allegations of systemic corruption within the Eastridge Police Department. Inside the Taylor home, Aaron and Sharon watched the coverage unfold on their living room TV. The governor's press conference played on every channel, his stern face filling the screen. The evidence presented to my office is deeply disturbing, Governor Williams declared. I've ordered the State Bureau of Investigation to conduct a thorough review. Effective immediately. Officer Brad Miller is suspended pending the outcome. Sharon gripped Aaron's hand. They're finally listening, she whispered, tears tracking down her cheeks. Outside, car horns honked in celebration. Neighbors gathered on porches, sharing the news through phone calls and excited shouts. Children rode their bikes up and down the street, ringing their bells. The police station's front steps became a media circus. Cameras captured Miller surrendering his badge and gun, his face twisted with rage. The police chief stood beside him, looking pale and shaken. "This is a witch hunt," Miller spat at the reporters. "These accusations are completely false." That soldier boy comes home and suddenly everyone believes his lies? But the evidence spoke louder than Miller's denials. Local news stations ran special reports detailing the corruption Sarah and Aaron had uncovered. Business owners stepped forward, sharing their stories of harassment and extortion. As evening approached, the Taylor family's street filled with well-wishers. People brought food, hugs, and tears of joy. Sharon's students arrived with their parents, carrying hand-drawn signs that read, "Justice for Mr. Taylor," and "Thank you, Mr. Aaron." The celebration was short-lived. The police union held their own press conference at sunset. Their spokesman, red-faced and combative, painted a different picture. "Aaron Taylor is no hero," he declared. "He's a military-trained agitator who's stirring up unrest in our peaceful community. His time overseas has clearly radicalized him. We have evidence suggesting he's planning violent actions against law enforcement." The local news ate it up. Suddenly, the coverage shifted. Old photos of Aaron in combat gear appeared on screen. Headlines asked, "Protector or threat?" The word militant crept into every report. Sharon paced the living room, furious. "They're trying to make you look dangerous. After everything you've done to keep things peaceful." Aaron remained calm, though his jaw tightened. "They're scared. This is what they always do when they're losing control." Around midnight, the street had finally quieted. Sharon was washing dishes, the TV still murmuring in the background. Aaron sat at the kitchen table, reviewing documents with Sarah on the phone. The flash of police lights through the windows came without warning. "Aaron Taylor!" a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Come out with your hands up!" Sharon dropped a plate, ceramic shattering across the floor. Aaron stood slowly, raising his hands where the officers could see them through the windows. "Stay inside," he told Sharon firmly. "Call Sarah. Then call Martinez." "Aaron, please." Sharon's voice broke. "It's all part of the process," he assured her, though his heart pounded. "They can't hide the truth anymore, no matter what they do to me." He opened the front door carefully. Flashlight beams blinded him. Officers crouched behind car doors, weapons drawn as if confronting a dangerous criminal. "On your knees!" someone shouted. "Hands behind your head!" Aaron complied, his movements deliberate and calm. Through the door, he could hear Sharon crying, could picture her watching in horror. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. An officer read him his rights, citing charges of conspiracy, inciting violence, and interference with law enforcement. The accusations were as ridiculous as they were predictable. They pushed his head down, forcing him into the back of a patrol car. Through the window, he saw Sharon on the porch, phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. The holding cell was cold and smelled of bleach. Aaron sat on the metal bench, his back straight despite his exhaustion. Hours passed. Through the small window in his cell door, he could see the sky beginning to lighten. Then he heard it, voices, growing louder, chanting, "Free Aaron Taylor! Free Aaron Taylor!" The sound swelled, echoing through the station's corridors. Feet stomped on pavement. Cars honked in rhythm with the chants. An officer hurried past, speaking urgently into his radio. "We've got at least 200 protesters out front. News crews are arriving. We need backup." Aaron closed his eyes, listening to his community rise up. Even here, in this cell, he could feel the tide of justice rising. Miller might have his badge, the union might have their lies, but the truth had a power all its own. The chants grew louder, 100 voices becoming 1,000. "Free Aaron Taylor! Free Aaron Taylor!" Through his window, Aaron watched the sunrise paint the cell wall gold. Outside, his people were marching, united and unafraid. They knew, as he did, that this arrest wasn't an ending. It was just another step in the long journey toward justice. The interrogation room's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Aaron sat perfectly still, his military training evident in his posture. Two detectives circled him like sharks, their questions aggressive and repetitive. "Who are your contacts overseas?" Detective Brooks demanded, slamming his palm on the metal table. "What's your real agenda here?" Aaron's voice remained steady. "My only agenda is justice for my brother." Through the two-way mirror, Sharon and Sarah watched, their faces tight with worry. Sarah scribbled notes furiously, while Sharon pressed her hand against the glass. "We need to get him out," Sharon whispered. "They're trying to break him." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "My contacts at the ACLU are already working on it, and I've got reporters waiting outside for statements." In the interrogation room, Detective Mills leaned close to Aaron's face. "We've got evidence you're planning attacks on police stations. Domestic terrorism charges carry heavy sentences." Aaron didn't flinch. "You have nothing because I've done nothing wrong. Every protest I've organized has been peaceful." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hotel room across town, three men hunched over laptops. They were Aaron's former Delta Force teammates, Martinez, Chen, and Wilson, their fingers flying across keyboards as they dug deep into police union servers. "Got something," Chen muttered, his screen reflecting in his glasses. "Looking at years of illegal payments, kickbacks, bribes, money laundering." Martinez nodded, downloading files. "The union's been running a protection racket, collecting fees from businesses to avoid harassment." Wilson grabbed his secure phone. "I'm calling our FBI contact now." This is exactly what they need. Back at the jail, Sarah addressed a crowd of protesters and media. Her voice carried across the courthouse steps, clear and commanding. "Aaron Taylor is a decorated war hero who came home to seek justice for his murdered brother," she declared. "His arrest is a desperate attempt to silence the truth." Sharon stepped up to the microphone next, her teacher's voice steady despite her fear. "My brother-in-law has shown this community how to fight injustice with dignity and discipline. His only weapon has been the truth." Inside the jail, Aaron was returned to his cell. Hours passed like molasses. He did push-ups to stay warm, counting under his breath to keep his mind focused. Suddenly, the station erupted with activity. Aaron heard raised voices, doors slamming, rapid footsteps. Through his cell window, he saw FBI agents in windbreakers moving through the corridors, carrying boxes of evidence. "Federal agents!" a voice boomed through the station. "Everyone stay at your desks. This is now a federal investigation." The local officers looked stunned as agents seized computers and files. In the evidence room, technicians photographed and cataloged years of covered-up complaints against Miller and others. Sarah burst into the station, waving court papers. "I have a federal order for Aaron Taylor's immediate release. All charges are suspended pending investigation." The cell door opened with a clang. Aaron stepped out, rolling his shoulders to release the tension. Sarah hugged him fiercely. "Your team came through," she whispered. "The FBI has everything: union corruption, evidence tampering, illegal surveillance." Outside, the crowd's cheers were deafening. Sharon pushed through the reporters, throwing herself into Aaron's arms. Her tears soaked his shirt as cameras flashed around them. "I knew you'd be okay," she said, though her trembling hands betrayed her fear. "The whole town stood up for you." Aaron addressed the crowd briefly, his voice hoarse but firm. "Thank you for your faith. Thank you for standing strong. This isn't about me. It's about justice for Marcus and for our entire community." As federal agents continued their raid, Miller appeared at the edge of the crowd. He'd been released on bail hours earlier, his face twisted with hatred as he watched Aaron's triumph. "This isn't over," he snarled, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Then he turned and disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving only the echo of his threat behind. The community's celebration continued into the evening. People brought food and drinks to the Taylor house, sharing stories of the protests and FBI raid. Children played on the lawn while adults gathered on the porch, their relief palpable in the warm night air. Aaron sat with Sharon on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as they watched their neighbors celebrate. For the first time since Marcus's death, genuine smiles lit up faces. Hope had returned to Eastridge. Sarah joined them, legal papers spread across her lap. The FBI's evidence is overwhelming. The whole department will be overhauled. Miller's previous victims are already coming forward. What about Miller? Sharon asked, tension creeping back into her voice. He's out on bail, Sarah confirmed. But with federal charges pending, he won't get far. Aaron pulled Sharon closer, feeling her tremble slightly. The night's shadows seemed deeper somehow, knowing Miller was out there somewhere, his rage and hatred festering in the darkness. The streetlights cast long shadows as Aaron, Sharon, and his mother walked home from the candlelight vigil. Their footsteps echoed off the closed storefronts of Main Street, the night air thick with humidity. Sharon carried a wilting bouquet of flowers, and Mrs. Taylor clutched her shawl tight despite the warmth. "Such a beautiful service," Mrs. Taylor said softly. "Marcus would have—" A figure stepped out from the shadows of Wilson's hardware store. Brad Miller stood there, his stance unsteady, eyes wild with desperation and hate. The metallic glint of a gun caught the streetlight. "Well, ain't this touching?" Miller's voice was slurred with anger and alcohol. The whole Taylor family, out for a stroll. Aaron immediately moved in front of Sharon and his mother, his body tensing. "Miller, you're drunk. Go home before you make things worse for yourself." Miller's laugh was harsh. "Worse? You've already ruined everything." He gestured with the gun. "But I'm taking something with me." His free hand shot out and grabbed Sharon's arm, yanking her forward. Sharon cried out in pain as Miller dragged her toward him. Mrs. Taylor screamed. Aaron moved with the fluid precision of his years of training. In one motion, he pushed his mother toward the store's recessed doorway while stepping forward to break Miller's grip on Sharon. "Run!" he commanded them. Miller swung the gun toward Aaron, but Aaron was already moving. He deflected Miller's arm upward as the weapon discharged, the shot echoing off the buildings. Aaron drove his knee into Miller's side, forcing him to stumble backward into the alley. Sharon and Mrs. Taylor fled toward the lit intersection, shouting for help. Miller recovered his balance and charged at Aaron with a roar of rage, throwing wild punches. Aaron blocked and weaved, his movements economical and precise. The fight spilled out of the alley onto Main Street. Miller's police combat training showed in his aggressive strikes, but Aaron's superior skills were evident. He redirected Miller's momentum, using the drunk man's fury against him. "Stand still and fight, you coward!" Miller bellowed, swinging the gun like a club. Aaron caught Miller's gun arm and twisted, forcing the weapon to clatter across the pavement. Miller broke free and ran toward the 24-hour convenience store, shoving past a startled customer. Inside the store, Miller grabbed items off shelves, hurling them at Aaron. Bottles shattered, bags of chips exploded. The cashier ducked behind the counter, frantically calling 911. "You think you're better than me?" Miller screamed, throwing a display of energy drinks. "You and your whole family looking down on us." Aaron advanced steadily, dodging the projectiles. "No one looked down on you, Miller. You did this to yourself." People were gathering outside now, phones raised to record the scene. Miller noticed them and his face contorted. He vaulted the counter, grabbing the cashier's baseball bat. "Everyone's gonna see this," Miller snarled, swinging the bat. "They're gonna see me take down the great Aaron Taylor." Aaron caught the bat mid-swing and wrenched it away. Miller crashed through the store's back door into the parking lot, Aaron close behind. The growing crowd followed at a distance, their phone cameras capturing every moment. In the parking lot's harsh fluorescent lights, Miller found his gun where it had fallen earlier. He raised it with trembling hands. "Stay back! I'll shoot!" Aaron's voice was calm. "No, you won't. It's over, Miller. Don't make it worse." Miller's finger tightened on the trigger. Aaron moved like lightning, closing the distance before Miller could fire. His hand clamped down on Miller's wrist, twisting until the gun pointed skyward. Miller howled in pain, but wouldn't release the weapon. They grappled intensely, spinning across the asphalt. Miller fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal, but Aaron's training showed in every movement. He methodically weakened Miller's grip while avoiding the ex-officer's attempts to headbutt and kick him. Finally, Aaron executed a precise joint lock. The gun dropped from Miller's nerveless fingers. In seconds, Aaron had Miller face down on the pavement, arm bent behind his back in a control hold. "You're under arrest, Brad Miller," came a voice from the crowd. FBI agents pushed through, weapons drawn. Local police cruisers arrived with lights flashing, illuminating the scene like a macabre theater. The crowd's phones captured everything as agents handcuffed Miller. He was sobbing now, all his bravado gone. "You don't understand," he blubbered as they lifted him. "They were ruining everything." Sharon and Mrs. Taylor appeared with Sarah Kimball, who was already coordinating with the FBI. News vans were pulling up, reporters rushing toward the scene with microphones and cameras. "Are you hurt?" Sharon asked, checking Aaron for injuries. "I'm fine," he assured her, watching as Miller was placed in a police car. "It's really over now." The crowd had swelled to fill the parking lot, their phones still recording as Miller was driven away. The night air crackled with excitement and relief as people shared videos and called friends. The convenience store owner emerged, surveying the damage but smiling broadly. "That was something else," he said to Aaron. "Like watching one of them action movies, except it was real justice this time." The courthouse steps buzzed with activity as reporters thrust microphones toward Aaron and Sharon. The jury had deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding Brad Miller guilty on all counts. Camera flashes lit up the cloudy afternoon as the Taylor family emerged victorious. "Justice has been served," Aaron stated firmly, his arm around Sharon's shoulders. "But this is just the beginning of real change in Eastridge." The conviction sent shockwaves through the town. Within days, the governor appointed a special oversight committee. The corrupt police chief resigned in disgrace. Officers with records of abuse were suspended pending investigation. The old guard was crumbling. 2 weeks later, hundreds gathered in Marcus Taylor Memorial Park, renamed in his honor. The autumn air was crisp as people filled rows of chairs, many wearing T-shirts with Marcus's smile printed on them. Children played near a newly installed playground while their parents found seats. Aaron stood at the podium, looking out at familiar faces. Sharon sat in the front row with their mother, both wearing purple, Marcus's favorite color. Judge Sarah Kimball was there too, along with Deputy Ramirez and his family. "My brother Marcus believed in this community," Aaron began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "He saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. As a guidance counselor, he changed lives not through force or fear, but through understanding and compassion." He paused, touching the folded paper in his pocket, but choosing to speak from his heart instead. "The past months have tested us all. We've faced hatred, corruption, and violence. But look around you today. Look at how we've come together, not just to tear down what was broken, but to build something better." Heads nodded throughout the crowd. Some wiped away tears. "The Marcus Taylor Memorial Scholarship Fund will ensure that students who share my brother's dream of helping others can afford college. Already, Local businesses have pledged over $50,000. Aaron smiled at Sharon, who had spearheaded the fundraising effort. The new Community Oversight Board will hold our reformed police department accountable. And the training center we're building will teach conflict resolution and de-escalation to both officers and civilians. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees as Aaron continued. But Marcus would want us to do more than just remember him. He'd want us to remember what he stood for, that every person deserves dignity, that education opens doors, that change comes through unity and persistence, not violence. In the back, Aaron spotted some of his Delta Force teammates who had helped expose the corruption. They stood quietly, letting the community take center stage in its healing. Today, we're not just honoring my brother's memory. We're committing ourselves to his vision of what Eastridge can be, a place where justice isn't just a word, but a reality, where our children can walk without fear, where badges and uniforms represent protection, not oppression. Sharon stood and joined Aaron at the podium. Her voice was strong despite her tears. Marcus always said that real change happens one heart at a time, she said. Today, I see hundreds of hearts beating together for justice, for peace, for a better tomorrow. That's his true legacy. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Children released purple balloons into the sky as the new community choir, another of Marcus's dreams, began to sing, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." After the ceremony, people lingered to share memories and plans for the future. The atmosphere was different now, hopeful, determined, united. Where there had been fear and division, now there was purpose and solidarity. As the sun began to set, Aaron walked through the quiet cemetery. Purple and white flowers decorated Marcus's grave, along with small tokens left by his former students, notes, photos, even a basketball signed by the team he had coached. Aaron knelt beside the headstone, tracing his brother's name with his fingers. The marble was cool and smooth beneath his touch. "We did it, little brother," he said softly. "Miller's going away for a long time. The old system's been torn down. Your kids are going to grow up in a different Eastridge." Behind him, footsteps crunched on autumn leaves. Sharon, his mother, and several community members approached quietly, each carrying a candle. They formed a circle around the grave, their flames flickering in the gathering dusk. "The fight's not over," Aaron continued, standing to join the circle. "But we're not fighting alone anymore. Your spirit brought us together. Your love made us stronger." Sharon took his hand, squeezing it gently. His mother began humming Marcus's favorite hymn, and others joined in. Their voices rose soft and clear in the evening air, a promise of continued vigilance, of unity, of hope. The candles glowed brighter as darkness fell, just as Marcus's legacy now lit the way forward for his beloved community. Here, in this moment of quiet triumph, justice had been served not just through courts and convictions, but through the transformation of hearts and minds. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.